Many of you don't know who I am. Many of you maybe see me around. However, I will like to say I do like to tell some stories. Currently, my Year 7 advisory think that I was an ex-world record holder in the shot put. I was German, Russian, and I'm currently and was the WWE wrestling champion of the world. If you say it with a straight enough face, they believe it. So go away, ask some Year 7s what Mr. Fraser did in his past time, and they will tell you, and they'll confirm with you that I was a WWE wrestler. Today is not about that. Today is about finding out a bit about my background. I have a number of people that ask me a number of questions. They all know I used to be an ex-football player, and the assumption that comes with a football player is, oh yeah, it must have been great, it must have been wonderful. Everything must have been easy as a child. Now that was wrong. This quote here, as you can see, and as I go through my talk, will become more relevant with some of the experiences and some of the setbacks that has occurred. Now those setbacks have allowed me to get where I am today, and I just discussed that as I'm going through. It's basically more of a biography about what I had and how I grew up. First of all, my family and my childhood. Sorry about the pictures, they're very old school, however that's what it was back then. I grew up in a normal family, mother, father and a sister. However, with a little bit of a difference. Every one of my family members represented their country in sport. My mother played netball for Scotland. My sister played netball for Scotland and represented Britain in athletics. My father played football for Scotland, and my grandfather boxed in the Commonwealth Games for Scotland. So there was absolutely no pressure on me as a child to do well. From a very early age, I excelled at sports. Wasn't just football. I was actually, in fact, a better runner as a child. I represented Scotland and Britain until I was 14. However, I had to make that big decision of what I'd rather do. I played golf to a good level. I probably could have went professional if I really wanted to. But football was my passion. And everything I did, I lived, I breathed football. And from a young age, I excelled it. At 8 years old, Aberdeen Football Club asked me to go down and train. And from 8 until 11, I trained every Tuesday evening and played on a Saturday. Then, the first setback in my life, which was at 11 years old, which is quite young. Not many people encounter many setbacks in life, but I remember a letter coming through the door. Now, when you're younger, you don't normally get a letter, so when it's addressed to you in your name, you think, oh, what's this? So my mother handed me the letter. It was one Friday morning. I remember it clear. She handed me a letter, says, this letter's for you. So I opened it up. And it was from Aberdeen Football Club. And they were just thanking me for my time that I'd spent there and the effort that I'd put in. However, they were telling me that they weren't going to ask me back to train with them. Now, the reason they gave as an 11-year-old was that I was too small and not strong enough. Now, if you think, how can you tell how tall an 11-year-old's going to be? Or how strong they're going to be? Now, at this point, I made it my aim in life to get stronger. Now let's face it, I couldn't get taller. Genetics just doesn't allow that. My parents aren't the tallest people in the world, so I wasn't going to be a 6'5" monster. However, I did make it an aim in my life to get stronger. So from that point onwards, I did various body exercises. Now this occurred and happened all through my life until about my mid-20s. At my prime, when I was a professional football player, I was doing 1,000 sit-ups and 1,000 push-ups every single night, and I didn't miss a day. Because that one letter had that sort of impact in my life. And I wanted to prove them wrong that I could be strong enough. So that's what I did. Now, going on to be a professional football player. At the age of 13, I went to attend a trial. Now, I didn't go to play in this trial. And this is what happens in life. Sometimes you get some luck, sometimes you don't. I went along with my friend who was 15 years at the time. He was a little bit older than me, and it was an under 15 trial. So I just went along to watch. There was a little trick that I always did just in case I could get a game. I always took my boots with me, just on the odd chance that I could actually get on and play. And by chance, this day there was one short, and they said, Alan, do you want to come on? Do you want to play? You won't get in the team because you're too young, however you can play in this trial just to make the numbers up. So I played in this trial, I played reasonably well, to what I thought, and I went home, didn't think anything of it. During that night, there was a phone call, and I heard my dad speak for a little bit longer than he normally would on the phone. He came off the phone and he said, Alan, can you come downstairs? I want to have a word with you. I thought, oh, what have I done wrong now? I was always doing something wrong when I was younger. So I said, Dad, what did I do? I don't think I did anything wrong at school. I don't think I did anything wrong on my way home. I haven't smashed any windows like I normally do. I didn't do anything wrong. He says, you haven't done anything wrong this time. He said, you played really well in your game today. And I says, oh, I did okay. I didn't think anything else. He said, well, that was Celtic Football Club on the phone, and they want you to come down for a trial. He said, how do you feel about that? So being a 13-year-old, obviously I was enthusiastic about it. I hadn't had any interest from any other clubs after I left Aberdeen, which was a year and a bit before, and they invited me down. So I travelled down and I played in this trial. Now I went down there as a centre forward, hadn't played in any other positions. And immediately they said, can you play left back? I said, I can play anywhere you want me to play. I was just enthusiastic, wanted to play there. I had a left foot. They had one look at me and they said, you'll never be a centre forward, you're going to be a left back or a left midfield. So from that point onwards, I played in that position. They wanted me to come down continuously. So in 14 years old, I used to travel down every Sunday. Now bearing in mind, Aberdeen's 3 hours away from Glasgow, where Celtic are based. So every Sunday morning, my parents, who didn't get to go out on the Saturday evening because they had to drive me down on the Sunday morning, I had to travel down, I played in my game, then travelled home, then I had to go to school the next day. At 15 years old, I was a little bit different from every other child. I was allowed to have an extra day off school, which I thought at the time was fantastic. But when my grades came in, it wasn't. Every Friday I got off. And this was the sacrifices that I had to make in order to become a professional footballer. I didn't get the same time with my friends that you get with your friends. I wasn't allowed to go to parties and exhibitions and games that other people was allowed to go to. I wasn't allowed to go on school trips because during that school trips I was down at the Easter holidays, the Christmas holidays, the October holidays training with Celtic. I didn't drink until I was 22 years old. I always made it my prime in life that if I wasn't going to make it as a footballer, I would do everything that I could in order to be there. And I couldn't turn around now and say I could have done anything differently. I did everything that I could. Now, the next thing was, at 16 years old, I got signed professionally. Now, professionally means you have to leave home. So at 16, you would have to leave home. And I remember a discussion with them and my father, who again had been through that professional situation. He knew exactly what would occur. He always said, what happens if you get injured? What happens if you're not good enough? You must concentrate on your schooling. So I said, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to stay on another year at school to do your hires, which is equivalent to IB. So I said, look, I want to leave. And my dad and my mother was very good. They allowed me to make my own decisions. He said, I'll allow you to leave and I'll allow you to go and play professional football. However, you must go to night school to do your further studies. So I agreed. Now this is very, very difficult to do that because you go down there as a 16-year-old and you have to do your night school. And I'll tell you a little funny story about another setback that I did have in life. Very early on at football, I found out that I had a heart problem. Now I had what is called an irregular heartbeat. So it's nothing major. To me, it was nothing major. To my family, it was quite major. And I had to go and get a heart operation. Now that involved basically going up and zapping out what we'd call the rotation of the beats. So the way that the circular system goes around your heart. My one would go beat, 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 beat. So they just zapped it out and then I had a normal heart rate. So that was a setback, but more a mental setback. Now I thought this was quite a good thing at the time because I hadn't been home for 6 months. You don't get every weekend off. You train virtually every day and you're in the club every day. So I thought I'm going to get a long Christmas with this. I knew it wasn't anything serious. An operation is serious, but it wasn't too serious. I thought I'm going to get home, I'm going to get home. Came out with the operation and I remember the Celtic physio saying, I'll see you on Monday for training. I was like, no, I'm not going to get home. So I didn't get home. However, I was back playing and doing everything else with that. Now the first setback that occurred with me, proper setback that occurred with me, was when I went down there as a 16-year-old. I left home. I was a young 16-year-old. I was mature in certain ways, but not in other ways. My family virtually looked after me my whole life. They took me everywhere. They watched every game. They watched what I ate. They made sure that I was comfortable. They bought me the best pair of football boots. But at that point I was on my own. My father was still on the end of the phone, but it wasn't like there was mobile phones and smartphones like there is now. It was still a phone call away. Now we went to Ireland on a pre-season tour. And very quickly I got put up the ladder, as they would call. So I should have been going to the youth team, but because I was a very good player at the time, I got put straight into the reserve team, which is one away from the first team at 16. And I remember the first pre-season game, so pre-season before the season starts, we were in Ireland, and we played a game. Now, I passed more balls to my coach, who was standing on the sideline, than I did to any of the players. Every time I got the ball, I kicked out of the park, and I just didn't have one of those games. And at the end of that game, the coach turned around to me and says, "Alan, you are the worst player that I've ever seen put on a Celtic jersey." Now, I was struggling to deal with being away from home. I was struggling to deal with the fun element of sport went with football. Football was always fun before, now it was my job. That's how I earned a livelihood. Normally, I could go back to my room and be on my own, but when you're on a tour, you have to either room with someone and you're always around someone, and it's very difficult to find that time. There's no crime in saying this, I was nearly in tears, so I decided to go out a walk. Now remember, I didn't have a mobile phone, I had to find a payphone, and I had to have some change to phone my father. And I phoned him up and I says, "Look, Dad, I'm the worst player ever to play for Celtic Football Club." He started laughing like he did, and he's like, "No, you're not, I've seen worse, I've seen far worse in your team, you're not the worst player." And I says, they said I'm the worst player to ever play for Celtic Football Club. So the next game came. This was against the Irish League champions. And I thought, no point in listening to this team talk, I'm not going to get a game. So half and half I was listening, you always did listen. Oh, my name came out, so I had a game. During that game we played against, it was St Patrick's at the time, and I got man of the match. And after the game, the manager turned around and says, "I was just testing your character." Now, even at 16, even though I left school that year, even though I left my family, who was 3 hours away, they were still constantly testing your characteristics and how you could become. Now, bearing in mind, you have to realise that if I played for Celtic first team, it's in front of 65,000 people. Okay? Not just the amount of people that's here today, 65,000 people looking at everything that you're doing right, but also everything that you're doing wrong. And Celtic and coaches, and no matter what age, they were constantly testing your character. The next issues that I had, and as you will see here, is the amount of injuries that's occurred in my life. Unfortunately, I've had 5 serious knee operations. I've had countless broken bones. And another story from my childhood, which I have told some of the footballers before, and I don't recommend happening to everyone. I broke my arm when I was 13, but we had a really important cup final coming up. So me being me and the type of person I was, I decided that I was going to saw my cast off. So I went to my mum and says, "Mum, I'm going to saw my cast off, I want to play in the final." To which she said, "No, you're not doing that. You broke your arm, I'm not taking you back to the hospital." My dad was in the background and he's going, "I'll take you back, I'll take you back." So I saw my cast off, I played in the final, I went back to the hospital and they said, "What happened?" And I was like, "I saw my cast off." And they basically said, "You're going to be one of those, are you?" And I am. I'm injury prone. However, being a sportsman and a professional sports person, you will always encounter serious injuries. You will not find one person that's been a professional sports star that will not have went through one of these injuries. Now, the worst one that I received was when I was 17. I had just broken into the Celtic first team. I was travelling to America with them on pre-season tour, and I'd played in the majority of their games. In the papers, everything was saying that I was going to be this next star. I was going to start the season off. I was going to make millions. And in your head, you start to believe that. It was the last game before the season started, and we were playing against Charlton at the Valley, which was their old ground. I went in for a tackle, I went across, and when I looked behind, my knee was touching the ground, and it just snapped in half. Again, me being me, I got up and I decided that I would try and run on it, to which I collapsed. Now, I was out of football for a year and a half. Another thing that you have to realise about being out of football is you go from being this person where everyone wants to speak to you. Everyone wants to know what you are, and that's coaches as well. My coaches for a year and a half didn't speak to me. They may be a hi. It certainly wasn't, "How are you doing? When are you back? How's your recuperation doing?" They forget about you because you're the least important person in their team because you're a year and a half away. Your best friend becomes the physio. I was in the gym 3 times a day for hours upon hours trying to get back. And a year and a half later, I was back. However, I went from a 10.9 100 metre runner to a 13.5 100 metre runner, which is a massive difference. And in sport nowadays, if you're not fast, you're not going to get anywhere, especially in football. They didn't seem too worried at the start. They thought, oh, it's going to come back, it's going to come back. So they did keep me for a further 2 years. And I played in a number of games. I managed to change the way I played, however the pace just never came back. So I remember sitting down with Martin O'Neill, who's currently the national team manager of Ireland, and I said, look, I need to do something different. I need to either try a different club because I'm not going to make it at Celtic, or I need to maybe go and further enhance my education, because I always had this thing that I wanted to be a PE teacher. Very early in life, when I went to the careers advisor, they said, what are you going to be? And I said, a football player. And she said, what if you're not a football player? Then I said, I want to be a PE teacher. And that's the two things that I have become so far. So then I remember that was the case that I did that. So I became those two things. So unfortunately, after speaking to Martin O'Neill, he agreed. He said, I like the fact that you're looking to further educate yourself. He was quite a bright and intelligent man. I believe he did a law degree, which is very uncommon with footballers. And he allowed me to leave. I went to my home club team again, Aberdeen. And for 6 months, I played the best football that I could ever have played. I changed my game. I changed my position. I went and played a sitting centre midfielder where I didn't need as much pace. And again, everything in the papers was future star, going to represent Scotland, going to do this, going to do that. He's going to get a 2-year contract. And again, I went in on Friday. It's something about Fridays with me. I went in on the Friday, and I went and spoke to the manager, expecting to sign a contract. And he just turned around and says, Alan, I can't offer you a contract. We don't have enough money to offer you a contract. And at that point, I was ready to say, look, I'll play for nothing. But when you get into your 20s, you can't say that sort of thing. You've got to start looking after yourself. So at that point, I went home, and again, I said to my dad, I said, you know what? Football's not for me. I still love playing football, but professional football's not going to be what I want to do. I want to go to university. So my sister was at university. She was also a PE teacher. And she managed to arrange an interview for me to go to Manchester Metropolitan University. However, I didn't get enough grades at school in order to go straight into doing the teaching degree. So I had to go and do a sports science degree first. So I went to Manchester Metropolitan University in 2001 to 2004, and I did a sports science degree. Another story and another setback. Life is full of setbacks. I did 1 year of doing night school, and I managed to get a number of hires. After that, I did not pick up a pen to write, and I didn't read much for about 3.5 years. All I did was went in, I trained, and I went home. So I was a bit apprehensive about going to university. Now the first 2 weeks at university, as you know, is called Freshers' Fortnight. Do you know that? It's about getting to know people, going out, having a few socialisation drinks, and at that point I didn't drink, so I wasn't interested. And I remember saying, look, I've got an important physiology exam coming up, and I was really nervous about it. While everyone else partied, I was the only one left in the halls, and I thought, well, that's good, I'm going to do the best here because I'm studying. So I set the exam. I said to my family, I said I did okay in the exam, as I thought. And the exam results came in. Now back then, you went to a wall and you had your student ID number and you looked at your grades. For me, it was just about passing, so I would have been happy with a 40% at that stage in my life because I just came out of playing football and didn't have that much education then. So I looked at the 40%, nowhere near it. So I went up to 50 and said maybe I got 50%. Then I went up to 60 and says I definitely wouldn't have got above 60%. So then I said, you know what, why don't I look at the bottom? And there I was, 7% in my first exam at university. I phoned home and I said to my dad, I don't think I'm going to manage this. He's very supportive man, very knowledgeable man, very bright man. He said, look, Alan, you haven't lifted a pen for 3 years. You haven't read much of a book in 3 years. Why didn't you give it a little bit of time? So I went to the lecturer, my physiology lecturer, and he said, look, take 2 weeks, study, and I'll let you resit another test. So I took 2 weeks and I studied. And on my resit, I got 95%. Because I was that adamant that I was going to achieve. Because I knew what was out there if I didn't achieve. I would have been stuck in a job that I wouldn't have enjoyed. Now, sport is my passion. From that point onwards at university, I never missed one lecture. I never missed one class. Because I knew if I missed that class, that would affect how I would get on. Another little story, and this is a good one. Liverpool John Moores I went to. I went for the interview, and when you do your PGCE, they only offer 13 PGCs, and there was 300 applicants. I went for the interview, wasn't sure if I was confident in getting in, and I remember sitting down, and the man turned around and says, "Oh, Alan, how are you doing?" And I thought, oh, he's just been really friendly. He said, "A long time no see." And I went, "Do I know you?" And he says, "Yes. When you were younger playing for Celtic, I was a Celtic scout that managed to see you in your first ever game." So he was actually the one that picked me up to put me down to Celtic. I have no idea how that happens in life, but that's what happened. Now, football also played a big part when I was at university. I managed to play for British universities. And another funny story, again, some people might think this is funny, some people won't. I played for Scotland when I was younger, all the way up to under 21 level. So you always got the kit, and I always kept the kit, and I always wore it when you were training. It was just one of those things. And I had to represent English universities. So I went to the English university trial, and the coach said, "Do you not want in this team?" And I said, "Yeah, I really want in this team." He says, "Do you really, really not want in this team?" I says, "Yeah, I want in this." He says, "Why have you came to an English trial wearing Scotland gear?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." So I managed to get into the English university team. Again, played against Scottish university team and a number of players that I knew. I then went and represented in the British universities and actually played in Korea. So again, football's opened up many opportunities for me. I also got paid when I was at university. I went down and I played semi-professional, and I actually got £1,000 a week playing football semi-professionally. So I was very comfortable living life at university. Another thing that the Scottish Football Association did, and again, many people see footballers and football associations in bad light, is they paid for my education. They paid for my student fees. They wanted people to better themselves. So I can only praise the things that they tried to do for me when I was going through universities. Now on to the last stage of my life as yet. It's my family and in Hong Kong. In 2008, I moved to Hong Kong. Now, not many people know that I was here before that. I played in 1999 in the first ever Soccer Sevens tournament for Celtic. And at that point, I'd been to many countries. I'd played against many teams. But that's the one place that I remember coming back, saying to my family, saying, "It's just different. It's so good. I loved it." And when my wife, I met her for my first year at university, she always said she wanted to go traveling. I didn't really want to travel. I like the thought of traveling. I don't like the thought of camping out and staying with other people. That's just not me. So what I did say was that when we're older, I would like to live in a different country. And immediately if you ever meet her, she'll know what she's like. "What country do you want to live in?" She needs to know there and then what's happening. And I said, "I'd love to live in Hong Kong." So a job came up in Hong Kong, I applied for it, and I managed to get a job at Yu Chang International School. For the next 9 years, I worked as a PE teacher and athletics director. I played for the Hong Kong Football Club, and my two children, who are now 2 and 6, were born in Hong Kong. I'm here at CIS. And many people that I meet always say, "Oh, you used to be a professional footballer. You must really miss it. You must really, really feel sorry for yourself that you got injured." Do you know what? I don't. There's actually no other place I'd rather be. There's so much pressure in playing football. There's so much commitment in playing football. And it just wasn't very enjoyable. The job I'm in at the moment is very enjoyable. Now, there's times, I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not going to lie to you, that it's very challenging, especially at this school. However, there is no day that I go home and think, "What a bad day." There's no day that I get up and think, "I don't want to go into work." And anyone that's in the gym in the morning will see that, because I'm up bright and early and I'm in there. There's no day that I don't want to better people's lives, because that's what we're here. Teachers are here for students, and that's what I'm here for. And it just goes to show that there's many setbacks in life, but you'll always get to where you want to get to if you put in the effort and you always find a solution. Thank you for listening.